Nick, what's going on? Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to be back here.
It's good to be back. It's good to be chatting with you, Therman.
Yes, yes, yes. Also, listen. So in this episode, I'm gonna start it off. I wanted to talk about the workshop that I had last time.
Hmm?
So when we had the last show, I did talk about the workshop that I had coming up. It was on Small Business Saturday, and I was focusing on contractors, government contractors who manage tasks. They win the contract, right? And when they win this contract, they get task orders. And on these task orders, they have to have tasks, right? They got to complete these tasks. What they normally do is put these things in spreadsheets. And what most people do is put all of their stuff in spreadsheets. This whole thing, you know what I'm saying? It's the trifecta of spreadsheets, Word documents, and PowerPoint slides, right?
Yeah, spreadsheets are everywhere.
Yeah. What I was doing was showing them that you don't have to do it in Excel. Like I know a lot of business users and end users, like they think Excel for a lot of things. And I was wondering about that, like where that came from. And I think it's just simply because no one told them. Like they entered the workforce and saw someone else using a spreadsheet to do X, Y, and Z. So they just thought, oh, that's what I do too, because Microsoft Office at the time was on my computer.
Yep.
That's what I use. I was like, or I'm always like, don't use a spreadsheet. I'm a big believer in like not putting data directly into spreadsheets. I'm like, put it into a system, a tool, anywhere, anything you got, put it into a tool. And the time you should be using spreadsheets is when you export. You export out of that tool, and then you look at your nice, clean, sweet data inside a spreadsheet, and then you start to, run reports and stuff like that. So the thing that I always champion is get out of the spreadsheets. So that's what the workshop was about. And shout out to everybody attended. It was a good look. You know what I'm saying? I had a good time. And I showed them how on a site, we set up a whole SharePoint site. You can have a list of task orders, a list of tasks, a list of deliverables, a list of your personnel, and a list of your customer and the details about your customer, and it all be connected. You know what I mean? So to me, you stop with the spreadsheet, you get into a SharePoint list, and then from the list, you can export and use the spreadsheet. Now, it's also not easy. You know what I'm saying? Like if I come along and I say, hey, you should put your data inside of an application or put it inside of a system and then export out the spreadsheets, they might not even know that there's a thing that they could even do they could even use to do that. SharePoint is an end user's tool now, right? Where before, number one, people thought you had to reach out to an admin to get something done on SharePoint, which you did. But then number two now is there's a ton of people that don't even know SharePoint exists. So if I run around talking about, hey, put your stuff inside of a system, what system? What are you talking about, bro? You know what I'm saying? So that's where I was with the workshop. Is first letting them know, get out of spreadsheets, and hey, you do have a tool at your fingertips that's an end user's tool where you could put your data into a system versus a spreadsheet.
So you're talking about situations where people are putting structured data that you would normally see in a database into Excel. So they're basically using a worksheet in Excel to look a little bit like a database table that you would see in a relational database, right?
Right, exactly.
And but
they do more than that.
That's not what Excel is designed for. And, anytime I see an Excel spreadsheet where people have kind of prettified it, made it look like a form, all these kinds of things, it's like, that isn't what Excel is designed for. There's so much better tools to use.
They don't just use it as what a relational database might look like. They also try to build the whole entire process inside of SharePoint. So they might take, let's say, the first tab, right? The worksheet. They'll build that to be like an instructional page. So to be like, put the big banner at the top and color it in or whatever, and then say, hey, use the second worksheet to do this. And then when you're done, go to the the third one, and make sure you link it up with the first one. And then go to the fourth one, because this is where you'll find this, and this. That's how they're using that first tab in Excel, which essentially just use a SharePoint site. You can have a landing page on the SharePoint site that'll explain all of that stuff to your end users.
My mind, when I see those types of spreadsheets, doesn't go to SharePoint. My mind usually goes to Power Apps. And so I find it interesting that particularly when you're talking about like a multi-step process, that you're taking people to SharePoint and taking them through building that multi-step process. Because my instinct would usually be, well, that's probably a Power App. That might be a model-driven app. That might be potentially a Canvas app, depending on how much kind of prettification you want of it. But that in some ways, the process, from my perspective at least, of taking what you've got in Excel over here and delivering it into a framework that can be repeatable over here works more consistently in Power Platform than it does with SharePoint.
So my thought process behind it is always like, who am I talking to? You know what I'm saying? If I'm talking to a person who is out here trying to win contracts and manage those contracts with their people, do I want to get them to a point where they are now using Power Platform? It's like, am I trying to train you on how to be a Power Platform user, or am I just trying to help you be a better business, run your business better, manage your contracts better? And that's my thought process. I'm always like, listen, can I point you in the direction of Power Platform? Absolutely. But then I got to tell you, well, here's all of the tools in Power Platform. You know what I'm saying? And here's how they connect. And here's where you get started and all this other stuff. And I'm like, the lowest barrier of entry is SharePoint, where you can put your data inside of a system. If you get to the point where you're like, SharePoint is not scratching my itch, then I'm always like, well, there's a way to graduate. You can graduate your tool out of SharePoint into the Power Platform. That's how I see the Power Platform, because I'm like, SharePoint can solve a lot of problems on a basic level, especially talking about spreadsheets, because we have SharePoint lists. So if we can go from your multiple spreadsheets to SharePoint, I think there's a lot of cases where you don't necessarily need to go to a Power App just yet. I think it's like it's a graduation. You go to first grade, second grade, third grade. You know what I'm saying? Your first grade is your spreadsheets, second grade is SharePoint, third grade and beyond, you go to the Power Platform.
Yeah, no, I see that. I think it's an interesting. I don't think it's necessarily a clear path, because when I think about SharePoint versus Power Platform, for example, like as soon as I get into complex presentational styling in SharePoint, for example, and I'm having to do everything in JSON for that, whereas in Power Platform, if I'm building a Power App, I have pretty much a WYSIWYG experience that allows me to build out like complex styling if I've got a gallery that I'm kind of working with that I want to be presented in a certain way. So I don't think it's, in my mind, there are some aspects that are more complex and there are some aspects that are simpler. A lot of the time when I'm talking to clients, what they're willing to do when it comes down to Power Platform specifically comes down to what they're willing to license across their organization. Not necessarily just those features, because the benefit that you get with SharePoint is that most of what you can do there is included in every single Microsoft 365 license.
Right, yeah. That's one of the things that I scream from the mountaintops is like, listen, like when I'm giving a workshop, I always have to stop and be like, listen, everything that I've shown you is out of the box. You know what I'm saying? I haven't gone to the level of customizing or anything like that. This is all, you get this, you know what I'm saying, out of the box. But let me ask you, do you think Power Platform is user-friendly enough for the typical end user? Like, well, not typical end user, but somebody who's running a business. Like you feel comfortable telling them like, hey, you could just build this app in Power Platform, or you rather just do it for them?
I think it depends on where they're starting from. If you've got the person who has spent their time building out those complex Excel spreadsheets, those complicated forms, those managed scorecards, all these different things that you see people have built in Excel, if they've got their head around the complexity of that and they've shown that they can understand how to build something that's fairly complex in Excel, then all you're doing with moving to Power Platform is using those skills, but with a more appropriate tool.
Right.
So maybe, yeah, you can work with someone in that regard. If you've just got the end user of a template that's been built in Excel for them, and then you say, hey, this isn't the right tool to use, you need to go and rebuild this in Power Platform, that's not the right person. So you need to capture the right person in the organization. The problem that I run into a lot is that the right person in the organization doesn't necessarily exist anymore. Like we have these this set of Excel spreadsheets that we've used for the past 10 years. Like these aren't modern Excel spreadsheets. These are Excel 97 documents that we're still opening and working with, you know. And the person who built them, the person who was interested in that is long retired. That person that was interested in this technology when it first appeared on their desk, and everyone that's come along since has just continued to use this stuff. And continue to break this stuff. In fact, I was working with a client recently, but what I saw when looking at these Excel spreadsheets was there was a lot of work that had gone on through the years of people who were clearly interested in making it better. Like we had macros that didn't work. We had, you know, there were lots of things there that people had started and maybe worked at some point. Like we're going through the archaeology of the Excel spreadsheet, looking at the history of it from the 1990s when someone started doing this right the way through to today. Yeah. And you can see that people have tried, and then someone's come along and been like, okay, I'm going to copy this entire worksheet over to this one, but I'm not going to take any of the formula with me or anything like that. And then over time, these things just break. Yes. And the person who was there, who knew how to set it up, isn't there anymore, or isn't interested in that anymore. And I think that's a problem that I see all the time, but I don't have a clear answer as to how you get around that other than changing the culture of the organization, unless you've got an organization that's interested in using tools properly. Like, I mean, how could you run a construction company if you had no one who was interested in learning how to use a saw or a screw gun?
Right.
You know, you can do that. Why in some industries, you know, if you have a chef, they need to know how to use an oven, right? They need to know how to use a blender. Like you can't get away with being a chef without doing those things. Facts. But for some reason, you sit in an office and it's perfectly okay to say, I have no idea how this tool works.
You're right. One of the things that I'm always like harping on is that it's like an example. I'd be like, you know what I mean? You wouldn't eat soup with a fork. You know what I'm saying? You're using the wrong tool. So you get into, again, no one said, hey, when you get to this job, here's how you use these tools. It was just there on their desktop and they saw somebody else doing it and they say, cool, I'll do it too. You know what I mean? And I think if I'm talking to the person that you were just talking about, the person who dug in and, you know, really cooked up that spreadsheet, then yes, I agree. They're the person who are ready to, you know, learn more complex, how to use different tools and all that. I would just hope that they're not the business owner, but the business owner is their champion and be like, yes, we want this solution. Can you train this person? Or can you train that person or whatever? And they get to know it too.
Depending on the size of the company, yeah. But at some point, we need to grasp the fact that having these skills, having some understanding, and you know, these skills are going to change. Like in the future, it's probably going to be, do you understand prompting? Do you understand what grounding means in relation to AI? Do you understand like AI? Like the skills are going to change. That's not to put anyone down. Like this is an issue across the entire, through education into employment, in how we focus on getting people the skills they need in order to level up what they're doing in their job, and frankly, to not be stressed about everything they're doing as well.
Yeah, but where do they go? Where do they go before work? They go to college.
Yeah.
I don't know about college courses for, you know, those years where they teach you how to use these certain tools. It's not like they're teaching kids, like my daughter's getting ready to go to college soon. She's not going to get a course on, not that I know of, on these office tools or any tool. Big tools, or like to your point about AI, are they going to teach you that? Maybe they'll attempt to. I don't know, but yeah, it's where do you go before you enter the workforce to learn those things?
But why not? I mean, if you go to a wood shop class, someone teaches you how to use a saw. Like you don't just sit there like theoretically looking at like pieces of wood that someone else has cut, and you know, isn't that lovely? Like you learn how to do these things. Like we have as a society, we have a huge blind spot when it comes to IT skills.
Yeah.
We don't have a culture of saying, stop, this tool doesn't work.
Well, here's the thing. a lot of times, the people who know these things are not in the rooms with those stakeholders making the decisions. Let's say Infopath, for instance, right? Infopath is no longer supported. It's a tool that people stood up inside of the Microsoft environment.
And it was a great tool.
Infopath gets a lot of hate online. It's like Infopath suck. I completely disagree. It had a couple glitches, but what a tool, man. Like when I could not do what I wanted to do with SharePoint Classic, and I got my hands on Infopath and I saw what I could do, I was blown away. So good tool, but there's a lot of organizations still stuck with Infopath, right? Which you need to get out of that right now. Now, to your point earlier, Infopath, for those who don't know, is a tool that helps you build forms, and you were able to connect to SharePoint. To your point earlier, that is 1000% where I say, if you're in Infopath, you need to go to the Power Platform.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need to upgrade, the quote, upgrade to SharePoint. There's no moving into SharePoint now because Infopath is a form. It's a customized form. Power Platform, Power Apps specifically, allows you to customize forms. Your next step is to go from Infopath to Power Apps. So organizations who are on Infopath right now, two things for you. 1,000,000% you need to get off. That's the number one thing. And then two, your next step is Power Apps. That's where you need to be. Your thoughts on that, Nick?
I mean, you're right. I think that the hesitancy, and usually when we're talking about Infopath, you're talking about organizations that may be a bit further along this road of having tried to modernize their processes. And I think the big failure with it, and you can talk about Access as well. Access is exactly the same thing. Like 10 years ago, I think Access was going through this idea of you could connect things online and you could have online access databases, and it's the same situation. The problem is that Microsoft has gone through this stop and start of this digital transformation tooling. There is no way to take your Access database and simply turn it into a Power App. There are some tools that can help you with that, but there is no way to do it from start to finish. Microsoft has not established a way to transition that. I think exactly the same is true for Infopath as well. And that's a problem because you've invested time in building something and you're going to want to get benefit out of that for as long as you can.
Right.
And that's the reason that we still see Windows 95 or Windows 98 or Windows NT4 working in like industrial settings. Because once you've got that big machine that you've paid a couple of $1 million for, if it's reliant on that piece of software that only runs on Windows 95, you ain't getting rid of Windows 95.
Right.
Whatever Microsoft tells you, you've already invested in it. And exactly the same is true with Infopath. Exactly the same is true with Access. People must be thinking, when's Power Apps going to go away? When's Power Platform going to be replaced with something else? And this is happening quicker and quicker and quicker now. And so I don't think people have. So I think that's a different issue. I think that's a different issue to the Excel issue. But I think the end result is much the same.
Yeah, and that it is unfortunate to hear you say that because obviously we're both in the Microsoft world, and we look at their tools and we promote them and all of that, and that is a big problem. It is the upgrade. What does the upgrade look like when you're dealing with Microsoft? It's super frustrating that, let's say SharePoint, for instance, to do a SharePoint migration should not be torture. You know what I'm saying? It should be extremely easy. The original tool to do the migration should have came from Microsoft, and they should have thought, yeah, you put all of this work into doing this, help us do the migration. And I'm not going down that road, but I just want to say I agree. That's one of the biggest problems with Microsoft is this whole doing the upgrade. You know what I'm saying? Graduating from one area to the next. And unfortunately, Access is a dying thing. You know what I'm saying? And I think Access is cool. I love the Access.
We know which apps are going to be disappearing. Just look at the ones that don't have a Copilot.
Yeah.
I mean, Copilot for Access? Nope. Copilot for Publisher? Nope. These are the things that feel like they're no longer being actively worked upon, and it looks like they're not any longer being actively worked upon. But it doesn't make any sense to me, because Microsoft will continue to support legacy stuff because people are on it, but they don't create tooling to move people off of it.
Right.
So they create the problem. Like, if they made it really easy to be able to take whatever you've got in these old systems and move it to the new systems, then people would do it. I don't see why they wouldn't do it. And if they said, well, whatever system's going to be next, we're going to create a clear path for you to move to what is next, then people would do it. The problem is that they have this history of people have invested in something and then they want to sweat that asset as much as they can, because they're going to have to invest a heck of a lot of time and effort in moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that Microsoft has created for itself.
It's unfortunate. But again, I could go on all day about that. But you mentioned Copilot, and I wanted to talk about this before we close up shop.
Yeah, sure.
So you've seen Planner, the new Planner coming out in FY24. So they're saying it's Planner, and you could, when you have Planner, which is like Trello, if you're familiar with Trello and the Kanban board concept, Microsoft Planner is a tool inside of the 365 suite that looks just like that. It's a Kanban board concept, but it's getting a facelift here in FY24. The first thing is all of the cool features you could do with Planner. You're getting some new Planner features, but then they also have, when you create what's a board, what they call a board where all your tasks go, there's now Planner. You can create a premium board, and that premium board comes with AI and all that other stuff. Now, with all of those features on there, I wanted to ask you what you were most excited about, but me personally, the most practical thing about it is that all of your tasks will be in one area. That's what if it works the way that they say it will, that's what I'm most excited about. You know what I'm saying? Is that all of your tasks, what's assigned to you inside of the whole Microsoft 365 suite, that whole world, you'll be able to access them in one place. That's what I'm looking forward to. Nick, what say you about this whole?
Well, I'm going to say, hang on a minute, Therman, because I think I made a video about this week, so I've looked at this a bit, and this history of there being inconsistency in tasks across Microsoft 365 is a problem. So it's great that this is being addressed, but there are lots of places that you can have tasks that I'm not sure are necessarily going to be in this new planner, especially not when it first comes out in 2024. So if you create a task list in OneNote and you don't create them as flags in Outlook, will it come across? I don't believe so. If you tag someone with a task that you want them to do in a Word document, in a comment, so far as I'm aware, that's not going to come across. The last time I looked at this didn't come across to tasks in Teams, and I'm not sure that it's going to come across to the new Planner app. So I think it's a good step in the right direction, but I'm not sure that I can hold my hand up at this point and say this is going to completely solve this task issue, depending on where you're going to go. Now, what I think we are seeing is that more of what Microsoft is doing is being centralized around this kind of a type of task, a type of activity versus a type of app, right? So I think what we're seeing with Planner is similar to what we've seen with Loop, in that Loop is componentizing what you do across Microsoft 365, and you can take those things and move them elsewhere. And I think what we're seeing is the same is going on with Planner. And I suspect that some of this has got to do with the long-term AI ambitions that Microsoft has got, because the more that we can move into the graph in consistently formatted data entities, the more the AI is going to understand what's going on. If you've got like 18 different types of tasks, how does your AI tool put those against one another? Whereas if you've got one data entity that's a task, or you've got one data entity that's a list, or you've got one data entity that's a table, and that just exists across Microsoft 365, then it becomes a lot easier for AI to work with it. So that's what I'm suspecting. But I highly doubt that the first day we get to download this new app or we get to add it to Teams, we're going to see literally every type of task that you can create in Microsoft 365 be there. I may be wrong. I may be wrong, but that's what I'm guessing.
Well, I wouldn't say that you would be. I would lean on the side of maybe you might be right. You know what I'm saying? Because I know how that is. I'm not like Mr. Jump out the window as soon as a tool comes out. I like to get my hands on it, use it for a little bit, and then talk about it. That's why I said if what they're saying is true, which it sounds like they're going to be missing out on possibly some tasks, it is a step in the right direction. And you're right. We have to look at everything that Microsoft is doing and imagine their strategy is leaning heavily on the future of AI. You saw that at Ignite. You know what I'm saying? 1 year later with it's been a year since, ChatGPT popped off and got crazy popular. Here's Microsoft Ignite, all about Copilot. You know what I'm saying? All about it. So
exactly.
We know where they're going. Now listen, before we get out of here, Nick, tell people what you got going on, where they can follow you, where they can check you out. You know what I'm saying? Anything they should know about.
Thank you to everyone who's bought a copy of the book, who's in the Copilot seat. So far as I'm aware, this is the only guidebook that exists right now on how to implement AI specifically for small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, if you leader of IT in a small business, or just interested in this, head over to Amazon and get a copy, or head over to my website and you can find out more information about it.
Good deal. Good deal. Now, listen, I'm going to just say real quick, the number one place for you to get in contact with me, if you want to reach out, ask a question, chat, whatever, I'm on LinkedIn every single day. So within 24 hours of you hitting me on LinkedIn, I will reach back out. If you want more content, check out my YouTube channel, the SharePoint Help Desk. I am in FY24 going to ramp up more videos over there. But go over there if you want to see more SharePoint tutorials, but like specific to different things, especially project managers. So like one of my more popular videos is like you would probably go create an action log in a spreadsheet. But as I talked about earlier, that's not the best way to do it. Go to SharePoint, create an action log for your project. And I'll show you how to do that. That's one of my videos over there. So the SharePoint Help Desk on YouTube. Nick, appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? It's good chatting with you.
Good talk with you.
Yeah. And hopefully the viewer enjoyed this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, hopefully it was a benefit to people.
All right, good deal.
All right, take care, Therman.
All right, see ya.